Chapter 391, Prelude to Battle. On the evening of the next day, a group of 12 people in black cloaks with red clouds could be seen standing right in front of Konoha's detection barrier. In front of that group stood the Ahiko-looking corpse puppet with a severe expression. "I will go in first to cause as much chaos as possible to disturb Konoha's troop deployment. Zetsu and Obito will be responsible for finding Naruto and for distributing information. The rest of you will deploy 5 minutes after I go in and help with searching and subduing Naruto." Without waiting for any feedback, Asura Path Pain, who was capable of producing all kinds of weapons from his body, picked up Animal Path Pain, who was capable of summoning all sorts of different beings, including the other pains. Asura Path Pain reeled back his arms, and moments later, Animal Path Pain was thrown in a high arc towards the center of Konoha. As soon as he landed, the other 5 pains were summoned next to him and immediately spread out throughout Konoha. As soon as Animal Path Pain breached Konoha's barrier, alarms went off all over Konoha as its shinobi immediately started mobilizing. Since the people in high positions were already informed that this would happen, countermeasures were instantly initiated. On top of the Hokage office, Tsunade was surrounded by multiple A and BU in a defensive formation, which was surrounded by another layer of red-headed shinobi who sat in a complex ceiling formation around Tsunade, resulting in a red barrier surrounding all of them. The moment Tsunade got the notice that someone had breached Konoha's detection barrier, she slammed her hand on the ground, forming a complex pattern. Kuchio's no Jetsui. A gigantic slug appeared and immediately started splitting into thousands of smaller slugs, which started spreading all over Konoha. Simultaneously, a complex pattern started spreading from the small symbol on Tsunade's forehead and covered her whole body in black markings, significantly increasing the amount of chakra she could use. The small slugs, Katsuyu split bodies, will attach themselves to the people of Konoha, allowing Tsunade to heal them remotely. Naturally, the formation around her was created to protect her while she was on healing duty. Meanwhile, every single shinobi inside Konoha under the rank of Elite Jonin had only one job: evacuating every single civilian as soon as possible. In front of a bunch of S-rank shinobi, everything under the strength of Jonin might as well be considered cannon fodder, so evacuating people was all they were supposed to do. Meanwhile, the Uzumaki clan went on high alert as the Uzumaki clan compound was turned into an almost impenetrable fortress. Even without listening in on Akatsuki's meeting, there was no doubt who Pain's target would be, so securing the compound had a high priority. Naturally, Naruto, Nagato's primary target, wouldn't bunker down in the Uzumaki compound even if that might be the best solution to avoid any dangerous situations. He might not have the same naive mindset as his canon counterpart, but he put considerable effort into becoming stronger and would not hide himself behind a barrier if push came to shove. So Yuna, Hinata, Anko, Karen, Naruto, Ino, and Haku left the Uzumaki compound as soon as they noticed the invaders and prepared themselves for combat. A wide smile appeared on Yuna's face as she stepped out of the Uzumaki compound with measured steps, closely followed by the rest of her group. "Well, is everyone ready for combat?" "Of course, Yuna." "Let's make this quick." "Hee, I wonder which one I will meet." "I can't wait, Tilda. Let's have some fun, Akane Tilda." "His Tilda." "Guhi, hey, can I claim a reward after defeating one of them, Yuna-sama?" Yuna chuckled in amusement when she heard the words of her harem. Hinata, with her ridiculous stealth, would obviously aim for a quick fight when it was an actual combat situation instead of a sparring match, while Anko has always been someone who sought after her own enjoyment. Karen, on the other hand, well, it was no secret that she was a hopeless case, so Yuna shrugged her shoulders to acknowledge her request. "Let's do this, Nei-san. But please give me that Obito guy. I'm still not done with him." "Let's do this, Haku. We went through a lot of training, and now it's time to prove ourselves against a powerful opponent. Indeed, it's finally our time to fight side by side with Naruto. Let's do our best, Ino." Naturally, Naruto still wasn't done with Obita, who was responsible for the death of Minato and Kushina. Although Yuna had told him the whole story by now and explained who was currently manipulating who, Naruto's current enemy #1 was still Obita. He might not be as obsessed with his revenge as Sasuke, which is probably impossible from the start, but that wouldn't mean he would forgive Obita for what he did. On the other hand, Ino and Haku could finally show how strong they've gotten and finally had a chance to prove that they were capable of fighting side by side with Naruto. That was a dream both of them had since they saw Hinata fight side by side with Naruto during the Chunin exam 3 years ago. Yuna saw the determination burning in everyone's eyes and nodded in approval. She straightened her back as an overbearing aura started flooding out of her, washing over her group. Very well. All of you have been trained to varying degrees by me, but I'm confident that all of you not only have what it takes to survive but that all of you have the skills necessary to win. Yuna's battle intent burst forth, flooding the whole village as her face twisted in glee. Go forth. Reveal your strength to the world. Fight and win. Ha ha ha, slaughter them all. The faces of the people surrounding Yuna stiffened for a moment when Yuna allowed her battle intent to slip into insanity at the end but decided to just ignore the last part. Yes. The battle against Akatsuki has begun. Chapter 392, Ino vs. Pain. A tall man with smooth orange hair and one black metal piercing through his nose and 4 through his cheeks was prowling through Konoha, looking for potential sources of information. This was Human Path Pain, who had the ability to read the minds of people whose forehead he touched and could even fully extract their souls to absorb someone's memories completely. When he was summoned into Konoha, he immediately searched for people to extract information from, but even after looking around for almost 5 minutes, he couldn't find a single person telling him that something was wrong. He was just about to start the causing chaos part of his mission and destroy parts of Konoha when he spotted a lone Konoha shinobi approaching him with measured steps. It was a young woman with platinum blonde hair and deep, clear, light blue eyes that seemed to stare straight into Human Path Pain's soul. Despite the deep impression the young woman's eyes gave him, he quickly dismissed her as some random Konoha kunoichi who was blinded by a desire for glory and, as such, tried to defeat him by herself. Naturally, he memorized the information of everyone in Konoha who he considered strong, and as far as he could tell, the woman in front of him didn't even have a bounty on her, so he simply dismissed her as a weakling. Pain vanished from his position, reappeared in front of the woman, and put his hand in her forehead at lightning speed. Tell me all the information you have about Naruto Uzumaki's combat capabilities. The young woman felt something trying to influence her mind, forcing her to answer the question, but she quickly suppressed that feeling while a sneer appeared on her face, and she slapped away Pain's hand. If you want information about my boyfriend, then go ask him about it yourself. While Pain was still dazed from his attempt of extracting information failing, the young woman, Ino Yamanaka, stepped forward and put her own hand on Pain's forehead while forcing him to keep eye contact. Well then, how about you tell me where your real body is hidden? Ino smirked as she felt part of her conscious invading Pain's mind, but before she could get her hand on any information, she widened her eyes in shock as she retreated from Pain, letting go of his head while breaking eye contact. She clicked her tongue in annoyance as she casually swiped away a drop of blood coming out of the corner of her eye. Guess that one is on me. It seems like invading the mind of someone with a Rinnegan is not a great idea. Especially not if I try to do so through the eyes. While Ino was monologuing, Pain snapped out of his daze as he puzzled together the information he had just received from Ino's rambling. I see, she called Naruto her boyfriend, so this must be Ino Yamanaka. I didn't bother thinking about her and thought she was just a random girl, but it seems like another abnormality has appeared around Yuno Uzumaki. I guess I should kill her before she becomes too dangerous. 2 black metal rods appeared in Pain's hands as he got ready for close combat. Human path pain wasn't really made for fighting in general since its only ability was to extract souls, but Pain was confident that defeating a young woman wouldn't be a problem, especially if her abilities wouldn't work on him. When Ino saw her enemy prepare himself for close combat, she couldn't help but frown a little. Frankly, she hoped for a fancier enemy than this. Both of them couldn't use what they specialized in, so this would turn into a taijutsu fight between two people who didn't like using taijutsu. Despite her thoughts, two kunai appeared in Ino's hands as her eyes started glowing, significantly increasing her perception. Ino shot towards Pain at high speed, prompting him to throw dozens of metal stakes at her, which she effortlessly weaved through. Since she could evade Hinata's onslaught of water projectile, this kind of barrows was naturally no problem for her. Moments later, she appeared in front of Pain and slashed one of her weapons at him. He wanted to block the strike by crossing two metal rods in front of his body, but before he could do so, Ino pressured him with the full strength of her soul, causing him to flinch for a split second, delaying his movement. Ino clicked her tongue when she realized that short delay she caused wouldn't be enough to land a hit on him, and already started planning her next move, when Pain's eyes suddenly widened, fear clearly visible on his face. Due to getting delayed yet again, Pain failed to block Ino's attack, resulting in a massive gash appearing on his chest that was undoubtedly fatal. Despite Ino being certain that her attack was fatal, she continued the assault on the still shocked Pain and sliced his head off to make sure he stayed dead. Seeing Pain's dead body on the ground, a dissatisfied pout appeared on her face. First, she has to fight someone who could practically only use taijutsu against her, and then someone even caused him to be distracted, making her fight even easier. In conclusion, she wasn't satisfied at all. No matter how I look at it, it was definitely Yuna's fault that he flinched like that. I will absolutely ask her for compensation after this is over. Despite her dissatisfaction, Ino bent down to pick up Pain's severed head to give information extraction another try, but just when her hand was about to touch his head, his dead body had vanished into a puff of smoke, causing Ino to frown. This is so annoying. Not only can these bodies be summoned by other people, one of them can even revive the others. Since I'm already done with my fight, I guess I should start looking for the one that can do the revival. Getting rid of that one should be the priority. Ino spread her sense again to find another enemy, but could only frown when she realized that all the Pains had the same chakra signature. Whatever, I'll just go to one who isn't involved in combat yet and confirm which one it is when I see him. Chapter 393, Anko vs. Pain. In the depth of Konoha, an almost invisible creature was stealthily crawling over the village's roofs. This creature was one of Animal Path Pain's summons, a gigantic chameleon that could turn invisible. Initially, Pain wanted to use it to infiltrate further into Konoha and wreak havoc at Konoha's hospital, one of Konoha's most essential locations, but his plans were swiftly thwarted when the chameleon suddenly started roaring in pain, while its body started melting at its neck as if someone poured magma over it. Moments later, a small crimson snake with a length of about a meter slithered away from the roaring chameleon and casually wound itself around the body of a nearby woman with purple hair with a weirdly smug-looking expression on its face. Hee hee, good job Akane, that's one down. His tilde. The mouth of the suffering chameleon opened, and just before it poofed out of existence, a man with long orange hair, 2 black piercing underneath his eyes and 6 more arranged around his chin, jumped out of it. This was Animal Path Pain, who had a plethora of summons in his repertoire. Without a moment of delay, Pain slammed his hands on the ground, resulting in a total of 3 summoning diagrams appearing on the ground. A massive bird with an exceedingly long beak that looked like a spear, a huge rhinoceros, and a monstrous dog appeared. All 3 summons had the Rinnegan instead of normal eyes. Anko frowned when she saw the 3 massive creatures in front of her. This was still the middle of Konoha, after all. Anko scanned her surroundings and sighed in relief when she noticed that at least there were no people in the vicinity she would have to look out for. Anko considered her options before simply shrugging her shoulders in indifference. Things would become messy anyway, so a bit of damage couldn't be helped. The colorization around Anko's eyes turned crimson as she slammed her hands on the ground with a vicious grin, and moments later, two massive snakes appeared next to her. She considered summoning Manda, but Anko didn't believe him to be trustworthy enough to call him for such an important fight. So, instead of Manda, she called for two slightly weaker snakes who were more reliable. Pain jumped on the giant bird, which immediately took flight, while his two other summons immediately charged at Anko's snakes, resulting in a massive monster fight in the middle of Konoha. Anko couldn't help but sweat a little when she remembered that Yuna promised Tsunade that the Uzumaki clan would partially pay for the damage dealt to Konoha during the fight, but decided that that would be a problem future Anko would have to deal with. Yet again, she scanned her surroundings and sighed in relief when she noticed multiple Uzumaki clan members hastily approaching the battle, each with a massive scroll on their back that could undoubtedly be used to contain the battlefield. Additionally, Anko decided to ignore the Uzumaki's excited comments about the awesome monster battle in front of them that would cause average shinobi to tremble in fear. Anko shook her head to get rid of her idle thoughts as her eyes landed on the massive bird flying in the sky, causing her to frown again. She couldn't fly, and reaching her enemy might be a little troublesome if he kept flying high in the air. Before Anko could come up with a counter-strategy, another two summonings appeared next to Pain and started falling towards the ground, a giant centipede and a colossal crustacean. Anko was slowly getting annoyed by her opponent's stalling tactics and clapped her hands together, gathering massive amounts of chakra while taking a deep breath. Flame cultivation arts, Grand White Inferno. A gigantic wave of searing white flames burst forth from Anko's mouth, covering enormous amounts of airspace, making it impossible for Pain's two new summons, who couldn't fly, to dodge. While the centipede couldn't do anything to block Anko's attack except for coiling itself up into a dense ball, the crustacean opened its mouth and shot a beam of water bubbles into Anko's attack. However, the bubble attack barely showed any effect as Anko's attack easily overwhelmed it, and within seconds, the two summoned beasts were burned into ashes. While Anko's attack covered the sky, Pain's bird summon managed to move out of the attack's path while maneuvering away from Anko's sight to attempt a sneak attack. Pain summon dove towards Anko's back at high speed, its pointy drill beak pointing menacingly at her heart. However, Anko might not be the best sensor in Yuna's group, but spotting a monstrous bird that was aiming for her heart was child's play for her. Especially if luring Pain into attacking her in close combat was one of the options she considered to lure him out of the sky. So, when Pain's summon was a few meters away from her, she turned around at lightning speed as dozens of snakes shot out of her sleeves, coiling themselves around the bird's beak. Anko grunted in displeasure as she used her snakes as springs to spread the impact of the charge attack all over her body instead of concentrating it on one point. If natural energy didn't strengthen her body, Pain's attack would have still been incredibly devastating, but since that wasn't the case, she only felt a slight numbness all over her body while a massive grin spread on her face. Hee, gotcha. Although Pain's summon was caught by Anko, he didn't understand why Anko acted like she had already won. That doubt was cleared rather quickly when he realized that the snake that was previously coiled around Anko was no longer there. Before he could react, fangs pierced into his neck, causing his whole body to melt at a quick pace. Naturally, his body was only a remotely controlled corpse, so his expression was still indifferent, despite his body's current state. However, just when his face was about to be consumed, his face twisted in fear, causing Anko to lift her eyebrows. Oh? I wonder what Yuna did to him, Tilda. Anko lazily stretched her back, pretending not to see how much damage the fight between her two snake summons and Pain's summons caused before she closed her eyes and spread her sense to look for another opponent. Meh, no more enemies nearby, huh? How unlucky. Oh well, let's search around randomly and hope for the best. Chapter 394, His Tao vs. Pain. A slightly chubby man with orange hair and two black piercings through his nose and cheeks moved through Konoha with high speed. This was Predapath Pain, who had the ability to absorb chakra, which included jutsu that was shot at him. Initially, it was planned that he would attract a huge crowd of shinobi so he could absorb the ninjutsu, which would refill Pain's chakra reserve, but for some reason, he couldn't find any other people inside Konoha. Although they entered the village only a few minutes ago, by now it was rather obvious that their attack was predicted somehow and that most people were evacuated preemptively. In fact, he could already see through his shared vision with the other Pains that some of the other bodies of Pain were currently confronted by powerful individuals instead of hastily put together shinobi teams, which means the first part of their plan was a failure. The chaos they wanted to cause within Konoha would very likely not happen unless something extreme was done. After pondering the situation for a short moment, Pain decided to send his Preda path to the Nara clan compound, who were the most ninjutsu-dependent clan in Konoha, to wreak havoc there. Well, the most jutsu-dependent clan except for the Sarutobi clan, who had too few members for Pain to bother with. However, before he could resume running, he heard some noise coming from a nearby alley before a teenager stumbled out of it. "Oi, Konohamaru, what are you doing?" Shut up, Inari, you think I did that on purpose?" Pain's eyebrows rose when he saw another young man walk out of his hiding place. At first, he wanted to ignore both of them, but after a quick scan, he noticed that both of them had a chakra reserve of around a week chunin, which he decided that he might as well absorb while he was here. It might not be much, but it was better than nothing. He vanished from his position, reappeared in front of the duo, and tried to grab both of their heads, but to his surprise, one of them dodged by substituting himself, while the other had two kunai in his hands within an instant and slashed at his hand, forcing him to retract it. Konohamaru, the one who used the substitute, already had cold sweat flowing down his back from the first encounter. By now, he had grumpily accepted that Inari was stronger than him when it came to an actual fight. However, his jutsu speed was still the fastest in the class by a considerable margin, which was the only reason why he somehow managed to escape Pain's attack. On the other hand, Inari's condition wasn't much better either. Although Yuna gave him a training plan, it's not like there were any secret methods to become invincible in there. It was pretty much only a list of chakra and physical exercises she deigned to fit him, combined with a nutrition plan for his growth. The only reason he could surpass the clan children in his class was a combination of his determination and stronger will due to what he experienced during his childhood and the difference between a training plan created for a group of children by an institute that wasn't even 100 years old and an individual training plan created by someone who had trained people for who knows how long. He was stronger, faster, and better at chakra control than his peers, but that was all. "Konohamaru, I think we are in trouble. TSK, I have an idea. Can you buy me half a minute?" No. AUCI. Okay, thanks. OOI. Clang. FCK. Before Inari could complain to Konohamaru, Pain reappeared in front of him and swagged down with one of his black metal stakes, which Inari barely blocked by crushing the two kunai in his hands in front of him. Inari groaned as his knees started buckling due to the force behind Pain's attack. Pain tried to kick him in the stomach, which he blocked with his own leg, causing him to stumble backward and crash into a wall. He really wanted to curse Konohamaru right now, but unfortunately, he didn't have the capacity to do so right now, as Pain continued his assault. Pain broke through Inari's defense a few seconds later as he pierced a black stake into his shoulder, preventing him from using chakra. Pain gripped his forehead, and Inari could immediately feel his chakra getting sucked out of his body. Luckily, the time he brought was enough for Konohamaru to act as he appeared next to Pain with a blue spinning ball of chakra hovering above his hand. Surprisingly, moments before the chakra ball was about to reach him, signs of fear passed through Pain's eyes, distracting him momentarily. Rasengan. Unfortunately, Konohamaru was fighting Preda Path Pain, resulting in his painstakingly prepared attack getting absorbed harmlessly despite the moment of distraction, dumbfounding Konohamaru. And no way. Pain's free hand shot forward and lifted up Konohamaru as well, while he started to absorb his chakra. Konohamaru and Inari could already see their life and hear when the sound of a cannonball getting shot echoed over the battlefield, and before the duo could understand what was going on, their enemy fell to the ground with a huge hole in his head. The sound of someone walking in flip-flops reached the duo, causing both of them to look at the sound source. "Gee, Grandpa." An old man approached the duo with leisure steps. He wore a half-open pink shirt with interlinked female signs printed on it and black shorts with suspicious-looking leaves printed on them. Additionally, he wore sunglasses and flip-flops. "Yo, Konohamaru." "I wasn't really paying attention during the meeting, but I heard some Akatsuki guy or whatever wanted to attack Konoha, so I decided to take a look." That old man was Hiruzen Tsurutabi, who pretty much spent the last 3 years of his life on the couch inside the Hokage office reading Po. Cough, refining his Tao. "Gee, Grandpa, what kind of attack was that just now?" Hiruzen thought about the attack he had just shot and simply shrugged his shoulders. "Just a little application of elemental nature manipulation I came up with on the spot. I made a small projectile and a long barrel out of earth chakra and coated it with water chakra to reduce the recoil. Pumped fire and lightning chakra into the barrel, causing an explosion which shot the projectile forward. And finally, I guided the projectile with wind chakra while causing it to spin to hit my target. All in all, no big deal." Konohamaru and Inari could only open and close their mouth like a fish out of water when Hiruzen finished his explanation. Frankly, both of them had seen Hiruzen's current state inside the Hokage office on some occasions and simply thought that he went crazy due to his age. Only now did they realize that there might be more than meets the eye when it came to Hiruzen. "Well, that was that Akatsuki guy, right? Guess that means I can continue reading, hee hee." A small book started floating in front of Hiruzen as soon as he stopped speaking, and moments later, he seemed to have forgotten that Konohamaru and Inari was still there, and dirty-sounding chuckles started escaping his mouth. The duo could only share a glance before nodding at each other in understanding. There might be more than meets the eye, but he definitely went crazy. Chapter 395, Universe's Pain. Shortly after Asura Path Pain landed, he distanced himself from the other Pains and undid his coat, revealing 6 arms, 3 faces, and a blade-like metal tail. He had the ability to change his body and produce all kinds of weapons, ranging from standard projectile weapons like shuriken to actual missiles. Except for Deva Path Pain, he had the most destructive capabilities, so creating chaos was an easy matter for him. Multiple compartments on his body opened, revealing cylinder-like objects, and moments later, they were launched at the nearby buildings. However, before they could reach their designated targets, a small ice needle pierced through every single one of them and turned them into ice blocks, resulting in them harmlessly bouncing off the walls of the buildings. "Geez, I would really appreciate it if you could keep the property damage low. Maybe it was a mistake to promise Tsunade that my clan would pay for the damage. Should I have given her something else to ensure that we could have some fun with this battle?" Asura Path Pain glanced at the woman with red hair and blue strands, who was sitting on one of the roofs while happily swinging her legs back and forth, and immediately turned around and ran away. There was no purpose in fighting Yuna right now. He was supposed to cause as much destruction as possible, and there was no way to do so while facing Yuna. While he was running, his blade-like tail slashed towards a nearby building to cut it in half, while even more cylinders were launched from his body and spread through the area. Yuna's image blurred as she appeared above Pain's tail and nailed it into the ground with an ice sword while simultaneously creating more ice needles to freeze the cylinders that were undoubtedly explosives. So rude. "Didn't I tell you not to damage any property?" As soon as those words left Yuna's mouth, an explosion echoed through Konoha as 2 gigantic snakes, a humongous rhinoceros and a monstrous dog started fighting in the distance, leveling quite a few buildings while causing Yuna's eyebrows to twitch in irritation. "Yep, that's a punishment." Meanwhile, Pain ignored Yuna's words yet again as his tail detached from his body and he started running away. However, before he could take the second step, a chain pierced through his back and exited from his front. "Get over here." Pain could feel Yuna pull on the chain, yanking him towards her position, so he decided to go on the offensive as multiple blades grew out of his body. Clang! Just before Pain's weapons could pierce through Yuna, an ice armor covered her body, easily blocking every single one of Pain's strikes. Pain wanted to create more weapons, but Yuna's hand shot forward and grabbed him by the neck, lifting him up with an indifferent expression on her face. How weak. Is this what you call the power of a god? This body probably couldn't even defeat a Skull Jonin. Is it because you are controlling it from far away, or because you have to control 6 bodies at once? Or maybe all that boasting you did about the power of a god was just useless dribble. Pain tried to create more weapons, but he couldn't do so for a reason he wasn't aware of. In fact, no matter what he tried, he couldn't move his body at all. Naturally, that wouldn't diminish his arrogance. Are you proud of yourself for defeating this puppet body? Do you really think this minor victory has any meaning? This is pointless. No matter what you do, you cannot stop me. I will bring peace to this world. I will show this world pain. For I am a god. Yuna's face twisted in disdain as she moved Pain's head right in front of her own, so the two would look into each other's eyes. Pain. What do you know about pain, child? A face-splitting grin busy insanity appeared on Yuna's face as she pulled Pain even closer to herself, almost making their noses touch. I will show you what true pain is. Due to the shared vision of the Rinnegan, all 7 Pains saw Yuna's twisted facial expression and her purple eyes that seemed to reflect the deepest depth of the darkest abyss, causing all of them to shiver in fear involuntarily. What a why? Crack. Before Pain could utter his question, Yuna clenched her fist and broke his neck. She was aware that that wouldn't be enough to stop this particular body from moving, so moments later, she encased the whole thing in a thick layer of ice and tossed it away in indifference. I'm a monster that has seen and experienced things you couldn't even fathom, mortal. Yuna shook her head to get rid of her slightly somber mood and spread her senses again. She couldn't help but feel somewhat disappointed in Pain's combat strength. Considering he proclaimed himself to be a god, she expected more from him. Well, considering Konohamaru defeated one of them and the timeline Hisoka was aware of, Yuna could only smile wryly while shrugging her shoulders. Guess I put my exceptions too high. I can only hope that the Gravity one will put up a decent fight. Well, as far as I can tell, a few more Akatsuki members are present, so I guess at least a few of us will have a decent fight. A short moment later, Yuna noticed that another Pain was heading towards the Hokage Tower and decided to make that one her next target. She bent her knees and jumped as high as she could, and just when she was about to start falling, a small piece of ice appeared under her feet, allowing her to jump again. She repeated that action a few times, and after reaching an appropriate height, she created another ice foothold, but instead of jumping up, she jumped towards the Hokage Tower, while thin wings entirely made out of ice appeared on her back. Since she hadn't started cultivating yet, flight was still impossible for her, but creating a basic glider with her ice after reaching a decent height was no problem at all. Additionally, she could make more footholds in midair, allowing her to accelerate even further, making this mode of travel quite fast. Why aren't you just teleporting over there? Kurama. I'm shocked. What is with that outrageous question? It's almost like you don't know me. I'm obviously not doing that because dropping out of midair is significantly more badass while allowing me to go for a superhero landing as well. So you remember about that special move I told you about that would definitely kill me? How about you use it right now? I'm sure you will need it against Pain. That Baron mode thingy. Sorry, but this ride, unfortunately, has no exits. You are stuck with me for the rest of my life. Life is Pain. No, his name was Nagata, I think. Chapter 396, The Battle Outside Konoha. While Pain's bodies were busy getting their asses kicked, Kakuzo, Haiden, Kasame, and Conan were waiting in front of Konoha's detection barrier. It had been 5 minutes since Pain entered Konoha, so the group was about to enter the village when they all heard a weird whistling sound. They simultaneously looked at the source of the sound, causing their eyes to widen in surprise when they saw a massive ball of spinning wind chakra flying towards them. Kakuzu, Haiden, and Konan immediately jumped out of the way, while Kasame drew his sword and slashed it towards the incoming attack. The moment his blade collided with the attack, the density of the chakra ball was reduced, but despite that, it still exploded and engulfed Kasame in a powerful chakra storm, dealing quite a bit of damage to him. Simultaneously, a pair of paper wings appeared on Conan's back, allowing her to dodge a barrage of ice needles that was shot at her, separating her from the rest of the group. Moments later, her position in the air was surrounded by ice mirrors with a young woman with black hair standing in each of them. Meanwhile, Haiden grabbed the giant scythe he had on his back and prepared himself for combat. However, before he could detect any enemies, a chain burst out of the ground, wrung itself around his ankle, and tossed him away, separating him from Kakuzu, who could only frown at how easily all 4 of them got separated. It seems like the information that we would attack today got leaked. Considering how easily we got separated, there is a high chance that our abilities were revealed to some degree as well. I wonder who the traitor is. Probably that Toby weirdo. Didn't trust him from the start. Suddenly, an unprecedented sense of danger overcame Kakuzu as all his instincts started screaming at him to move aside. He only managed to shift his body slightly before 5 water blades pierced through his body and another one barely missed his head, resulting in a bloody gash appearing on his cheek. TSK missed son. Kakuzu shuddered in terror when he realized that 2 of his 5 hearts had just gotten destroyed and that the only reason why the other 3 were still intact was that he moved his body a little, resulting in his attacker slightly missing her targets. Before his assailant could get another shot in, black threads burst out of his body and started lashing out, forcing the other person away from him. Simultaneously, 2 of the masts on his back started melting, signifying the loss of 2 of his hearts, while the other 2, one with red lips and the other with green markings under its eyes, detached from his body and formed into independent creatures entirely made out of his threads. Kakuzu warily turned around to get a look at the person who had just destroyed 2 of his hearts within an instant and couldn't help but be surprised when he saw that the responsible person was a young woman. Who is that? How can someone so young sneak up on me like that? Wait a moment, those eyes. She's a Hyuga. Why is she using water style then? Ah, I just remembered hearing about someone like that participating in a Chunin exam 3 years ago. Well, the only thing I heard is that a person appeared that could hide herself from the Byakugan, so that must be her. Unlike Yuna, who tends to do things in a flashy manner, Hinata was the exact opposite. Her stealth was pretty much unmatched, so most of her missions were done without a single unnecessary soul ever seeing her, resulting in almost no one outside of Konoha knowing about her abilities. In fact, she didn't even have a bounty yet, despite already having done quite a few S-rank missions. Additionally, the last time she fought in public was during the Chunin exams 3 years ago, which was swiftly overshadowed by the appearance of Shikaka, Hashirama, and Tobirama. If Kakuzu had any interest in gossip, he would have easily known that Yuna and Hinata were dating, which meant that Hinata would undoubtedly carry one of Yuna's special kunai, which in turn would make Kakuzu run away immediately. However, he had no interest in love gossip, so he only considered Hinata to be someone with a heavy specialization in stealth, which would be useless now that she didn't fully succeed in her surprise attack. Kakuzu took a deep breath to calm down his agitation from losing 2 of his hearts and put all of his attention on the young woman in front of him. At first, he was afraid that he had met someone he couldn't deal with, but those worries immediately disappeared after properly analyzing the situation. As long as he paid attention to sneak attacks, he was confident that he could finish this quickly. It's impressive that you managed to take out 2 of my hearts at once. It has been a long time since that happened. Fortunately, you appear to have a good water affinity, so your heart will be a good replacement for one of the 2 you destroyed. Naturally, the young woman, Hinata, didn't care about Kakuzu's words and pointed a thin sword at Kakuzu's head. "Sorry, but I'm afraid my heart already belongs to someone else." Damn, that was cheesy. It's good that we have already split you apart, and no one else heard it. That useless comment aside, how did you manage to gather so much information about us? It appears like the group that attacked us already knew how we would react to the ambush and was aware of our abilities. Hinata paused for a moment when she heard Kakuzu's question. Naturally, that knowledge came from Hisoka, who was aware of the other timeline. Although they never trusted the knowledge they got that way 100%, so far, it was rather accurate. Obviously, Hinata wouldn't tell Kakuzu about that, so she came up with a rather interesting alternative solution. Isn't that obvious? You have a traitor in your ranks. TSK, so it really was like that. Who is it? Hinata seemed to ponder on whether she should reveal the secret or not for a moment before she simply shrugged her shoulders. Well, since none of you will survive today, I might as well tell you. Honestly, it's pretty obvious. Hayden and Kasame are too stupid to pull a stunt like that. Conan is 100% loyal to Pain. Toby joined you only recently, so he wouldn't have any information about your abilities, so only Zetsu remains. Zetsu always had his own agenda within Akatsuki, and now that he no longer needs you, he made sure to leak your information to increase the chances of you dying during this battle. As for what his real goal is, who knows? Kakuzu squinted his eyes at Hinata's words. Although he wouldn't believe her immediately, her words at least made sense. Kakuzu never trusted someone quickly, and he always found Zetsu to be a very suspicious character, so Hinata's words had at least some effect on him. As for why Hinata decided to tell him this half-lie, she couldn't be entirely sure that she could kill Kakuzu today. He had lived for almost 100 years, so who knew just how many obscure escape techniques he had accumulated over the years. However, now that Hinata planted some distrust for Zetsu in him, he would very likely not rejoin Akatsuki even if he survived today, taking him out of the equation no matter what happens. Chapter 397, Hinata vs. Kakuzu. Water style, 1000 water bullets. Earth style, massive earth wall. A hail of pressurized water bullets shot towards Kakuzu, who blocked them by creating a massive earth wall in front of him. He was just about to prepare his next jutsu when his eyes widened in surprise as he covered his right hand with his threads to block the incoming sword that was about to pierce his back. Clang. The tip of Hinata's sword collided with Kakuzu's hand, causing sparks to fly and Hinata to click her tongue. Her other hand, which was covered in water nature chakra, shot towards Kakuzu as well, but before her attack could reach him, she had to pull back her hand and dodge away, as one of Kakuzu's masked creatures started shooting fire at her. While dodging the flames, the other creatures started moving as well. It rained down a hail of wind bullets at her, forcing her to create a wall of water, which blocked all of them. Unfortunately, while she was creating that water wall, Kakuzu made a move as well and launched a huge bundle of his black threads towards Hinata, breaking through her water wall and hitting her in the stomach, sending her crashing into a nearby tree. Seems like that was it for you, little girl. Hinata scoffed at Kakuzu's words and effortlessly stood up, revealing that she was barely hurt, surprising Kakuzu quite a bit. I admit that was quite the powerful attack, but did you seriously think you could take me out with a single attack? In fact, that was precisely what Kakuzu thought. Only very few could match him in physical strength, especially after enhancing his attack power with his threads. Since his opponent was already very proficient in stealth and water style, he assumed physical strength would be her weakness and that she wouldn't have a strong body. It was actually pretty common for female shinobi to put less effort into endurance and focus more on agility and dexterity instead, which, considering the differences in body types between men and women, made sense in most cases. However, Hinata was far from an ordinary female shinobi. She frequently fought Anko for the silliest things, and those fights were almost always pure taijutsu fights. Additionally, she would frequently spar with the other people in their little group, including endurance freaks like Yuna, Naruto, and Lei. Even if the attack she took was from Tsunade instead of Kakuzu, she could still continue fighting without a problem. Suddenly, the atmosphere around Hinata changed as the skin around her eyes turned blue, causing Kakuzu to tense up. Although he had never seen someone using Sage Mode, he could at least tell that Hinata suddenly got significantly stronger. Guess I should have used this from the beginning. If I had, I might have actually gotten all your hearts with my first attack. As soon as Hinata finished speaking, 10 water blobs started hovering around her, seemingly without her input. Moments later, all 10 of them began to shoot highly pressurized water beams at Kakuzu, whose eyes widened due to the abruptness of the attack. He went through a few hand signs at lightning speed and slammed his hands on the ground, causing another earth wall to rise. However, this time Hinata's attack pierced through it after a very short delay, which Kakuzu barely managed to use to dodge out of the way. While he was dodging, his 2 masked creatures combined into one. One mask shot a massive flame breath towards Hinata, and the other one used a Winjatsu to amplify the first one's fire even further, resulting in a gigantic sea of flames rushing towards Hinata. Hinata lifted her sword as water chakra rushed into it, causing it to glow blue. She cautiously looked around to ensure that no one else was close enough to hear and slashed down her sword just when the sea of flames was about to reach her while opening her mouth. Water sword combination style, ocean-splitting water ray. A shudder went through Hinata's body as she said her attack name out loud, while a light blush appeared on her face. Damn it, although that was rather embarrassing, it felt amazing at the same time. While Hinata was contemplating what she had just done, a colossal water blade shot towards the sea of flames and easily split it apart, causing the fire to harmlessly pass by Hinata's sides without touching her. However, the power of her attack was barely diminished after coming in contact with Kakuzu's attack and continued advancing towards the combined masked creature. It wanted to dodge, but Hinata's attack was too fast and too big for it to do so, so before it could do anything else, her attack reached it and tore it into shreds, taking out both masked creatures at the same time while causing Kakuzu's eyes to bulge in surprise. What the F was that? I have fought Jinchuriki before, and even they couldn't produce such an attack. Although the scale is much smaller than what a Jinchuriki could do, that destructive power is beyond ridiculous. My threads were cut apart like they were made of paper. And it was done by a water jutsu of all things. Wasn't water supposed to be weak against earth? Sweat was flowing down Kakuzu's back like a river. 4 of his 5 hearts were gone. At the start of this fight, he thought that the only reason Hinata managed to take out 2 of his hearts was because of her ridiculous stealth, but now he realized that he was wrong. Hinata wasn't a one-trick pony that only had stealth in her repertoire. She was a monstrous genius in water style, surpassing even the likes of Tobirama Senju, who was known for his ridiculous proficiency in water style. Kakuzu had the hope that Hinata would be utterly exhausted after using such a ridiculous attack, but after the smoke cleared and he saw that her breathing was only slightly strained while her face was somewhat flushed, he immediately abandoned that hope. I don't think I can win this. I only have my Earth Chakra heart left, and despite Earth supposedly being strong against water, she can easily cut through my jutsu with her water. Should I run? Ridiculous, she has a Byakugan. While Kakuzu was pondering his next step, Hinata saw the intention to run away flicker across his face, making her frown. She sheathed her sword and clapped her hand together, amassing ridiculous amounts of chakra. Water cultivation art, water domain creation. The air around Hinata slightly wobbled, and moments later, a shockwave spread out from Hinata's position. Surprisingly, it didn't deal any damage to the surroundings and only harmlessly passed through everything, including Kakuzu. However, as soon as the shockwave washed over him, Kakuzu couldn't help but tremble a little as he got the impression of being trapped within a cage. He frantically looked around but couldn't see any changes in his surroundings. Before he could do anything else, the small water blobs that Hinata previously used returned, but this time they covered a massive area all around him. "Sorry, but I would rather not allow you to run away, so you will have to die now." Kakuzu gritted his teeth when he realized that he was utterly trapped in his opponent's jutsu. No matter how he looked at it, there was no way out of this. Hinata lifted her hand and was about to launch her jutsu when Kakuzu hastily lifted up his arms. "Wait a moment, I surrender." Hinata hesitated for a moment when she heard that he wanted to surrender and looked at him with a questioning look. "No need to be surprised, it's not like I was ever loyal to Akatsuki. I joined them for the money and nothing else. Now that Setsu has betrayed me, I have no second thoughts about crossing them." Hinata paused for a moment and pondered Kakuzu's words before nodding her head in acknowledgement and tossing a sealing tag towards Kakuzu. "This will temporarily seal you away. Put this on your body and I will believe in your surrender." Kakuzu eyed the sealing tag Hinata just tossed at him with suspicion, but after letting his gaze wander of the hundreds of water blobs flying around him another time, he gritted his teeth and put the sealing tag on his body. As soon as he did so, seals started covering his whole body at lightning speed, and a few seconds later, only a tiny token with seal ID 042 written on it remained. Hinata took a deep breath as she cancelled her large-scale jutsu. Although she didn't show it while preparing her last jutsu, it needed ridiculous amounts of chakra to use, and the only reason why she decided to use it was that she noticed that Kakuzu might want to run away. If her enemy wanted to run, she might as well use her strongest jutsu that would undoubtedly exhaust her and try to defeat him before he could get away. In the end, all of that was unnecessary, as Kakuzu decided to surrender instead. After being brought back to Konoha, Hinata had no clue what would happen to him, but she couldn't care less either way. She never promised him to save his life, after all, and only told him that she would accept his surrender. Chapter 398, Karen vs. Hayden. A loud thud echoed over a clearing near Konoha's sensing barrier as a tall man with gray hair and purple eyes was smashed face-first into the ground by a chain wrapped around his ankle. "Who was that? Come out, you bastard." Moments later, he managed to regain his bearing, stood up like nothing had happened, and immediately started yelling. However, instead of a person appearing, 6 chains started lashing out at him, forcing him to frantically block and dodge them with the massive scythe he was holding that was clearly not made for such a purpose. "Face me, cower." Smack. Hayden started throwing another tantrum, resulting in him getting distracted and getting smacked in the face by one of the 6 chains, sending him crashing through multiple nearby trees. Meanwhile, Karen looked at her opponent with a conflicted expression. Honestly, Hayden was an absolutely terrifying opponent if someone didn't know what he was capable of. After all, allowing him to draw a single drop of blood was pretty much a death sentence. If Karen hadn't heard about his ability beforehand, she probably wouldn't have started the fight with her chains and would have started slowly probing her opponent, which would have undoubtedly resulted in Hayden going for a suicide attack only to get a single drop of her blood. After all, he was immortal. Then, after acquiring that drop of blood, he would have simply done his weird ritual and killed her before she could even understand what was going on. She didn't really get how Hisoka of all people managed to procure such vital information, but she wouldn't complain about it either. Additionally, she was told that that information might be inaccurate, but so far, everything checked out perfectly, including Hayden's immortality and unpractical weapon choice that was clearly created just to draw blood. Actually, Yuna had told Karen why Hisoka had information like that, but at that time, Karen was rather distracted by something else. Anyway, since Karen was fully aware of Hayden's abilities, she could only look at him in pity as he tried to block and dodge her chains frantically. Not only was she fully aware of everything Hayden could do, but she was pretty much a perfect counter for him as well, making the situation even more pitiful. An average shinobi would at most carry a kunai with them or at best a small sword, which would easily get overwhelmed by Hayden's ridiculous weapon, but Karen had her chains, which made it child's play to keep Hayden at a distance. And, on top of that, she specializes in seals, which was the perfect counter for Hayden's immortality. You damn bitch, get over here so I can sacrifice you to Jashin-sama. Sorry, not interested. How about you surrender so that I can turn you into a test subject for Yuna-sama? She said that she is curious about your immortality, after all. Like that, you can at least be useful to someone worthwhile instead of your imaginary friend. Imaginary friend? You dare insult Jashin-sama like that? Well, I'm honestly surprised that you managed to understand my insinuation. It seems like I have to increase the number of brain cells recorded in your profile by 50%, bringing you to a total of 3. I'm impressed. As soon as Karen stopped speaking, Hayden saw red and charged towards Karen in reckless abandonment, completely ignoring the chains that were flailing his body in favor of landing a single head on Karen. You will be today's first sacrifice, and after I'm done with you, I will go after that worthless bitch Yuna who you are so fond of and kill her as well. The only worth she has is getting sacrificed to Jashin-sama. The moment Hayden finished speaking, the atmosphere on the battlefield changed. Hayden noticed that the number of attacks he received significantly decreased, causing him to smile in glee while thinking his words had intimidated Karen. Tear from under his right eye and looked at Kasame proudly. To think you would smarten up to such a high degree. Itachi would be proud of your progress, fish face. Kasame almost had one of his blood vessels burst in anger when Naruto started looking at him like a toddler who just managed to put the square block into the square hole, but despite that, he managed to contain his anger and didn't mindlessly charge at Naruto. He had at least learned that callously approaching Naruto was not a good idea. Although Naruto pretended to look happy that Kasame improved his brain's capabilities from 0 to a little more than 0, he was actually pretty annoyed by it. He was hoping that Kasame would charge at him like an idiot again and that he could finish him off in one move after he gets flung to the ground by his seal. Naruto pondered how he should approach this fight for a moment before he decided on what he deemed the best approach. He flicked his wrists, causing 6 unique-looking kunai to appear, which he swiftly tossed towards Kasame. Naturally, Kasame noticed the way Naruto's kunai looked and immediately understood what Naruto was planning to do. He wielded Samahada in a vast arc, punting all of Naruto's kunai away while simultaneously sucking up the chakra, keeping the seals on the kunai functioning. Hee, that won't work. Oh. Giant Rasengan. Before Kasame could understand what was going on, Naruto appeared behind him and slammed a big Rasengan into his back, sending him hurling away while tearing a huge wound into his back. However, Kasame managed to right himself in midair and landed on his feet while continuing to slide backward due to the force of Naruto's attack. Samahada had already started healing his wound, but Kasame still had an ugly expression on his face since he could feel that there was almost no chakra that could be used for healing left, meaning he had to absorb more from Naruto. You bastard, how did you manage to get behind me? Naruto chuckled in amusement as he casually spun a kunai on his finger. Isn't that pretty obvious? I teleported. Bullshit, I blocked all your seals and disabled them. There was no place for you to teleport to. Hee, are you sure about that? What was the greatest weakness of the Flying Thunder God seal? Everyone knew how it worked, at least to some degree. The user would prepare special kunai and use them as teleportation points. Everyone knew that that was how it worked. However, a lot of people tend to forget that the important part wasn't the kunai. It was the seal on the kunai. Isn't creating special-looking kunai to carry the teleportation marker incredible stupid? After all, it will instantly tell your opponent that the kunai has a mark on it. No, that was simply part of the trick. It was a distraction to make people focus on the kunai instead of the seal itself. So, how did Naruto manage to place a seal directly behind Kasame? He distracted him with the 6 obviously marked kunai, took out a small metal plate with the necessary seals engraved into it, which was rolled up to make it look like a small, almost impossible to see needle, and stealthily threw it behind Kasame. Unfortunately, using such a thin metal plate instead of a solid metal piece like a kunai to hold the seal made it a one-time use item. Those needles were a pain to create, so Naruto had only very few of them, but he was certain that he had enough to empty Kasame's chakra before running out of needles. He was just about to toss another set of kunai at Kasame when a massive shockwave washed over Naruto and Kasame, causing Naruto's eyes to widen in surprise. Damn, seems like things are getting quite dangerous. Naruto pondered for a split second before a severe expression appeared on his face. I have no time to take this slowly. Time to switch from a strategic approach to brute force. A yellow chakra coat with black stripes covered his body as his pupils turned cross-shaped and the skin around his eyes changed color. He flexed his hand, causing another Rasen Shuriken to appear on top of it, which he tossed towards Kasame without a moment of hesitation. Let's finish this. Rasen Shuriken,